Warning, these reviews of the Sylvester McCoy era of Doctor Who contain material that some may find offensive. First, Time in the Rani.
A chance for Doctor Who to make a fresh start and leave the disaster of the trial season firmly in the past. A new Doctor, new theme tune, new script editor, and an opportunity to revamp the series and capture a whole new generation of fans. What a shame it all turned out as such an unmitigated pile of stinking manure. McCoy demonstrates swiftly that he has been woefully miscast as the Doctor, right from the moment he first appears in an awful Harpo Marx wig, and proceeds to amaze the audience throughout part 1 with the most inept display of acting ever seen on British television. As if this wasn't enough, we have Kate O'Mara performing as if she's in a matinee of Babes in the Wood, and being forced into the ultimate humiliation of impersonating the equally atrocious Bonnie Langford. The jest cast are wasted and made to look like fools, the tetraps are a reasonable idea badly realized, and the incidental music is the worst in the show's history. Special mention must go to the script, which couldn't have been worse if it had been written by a couple of remedial chimps. There is no way that a rating can be provided for this story or indeed any of the McCoy era, as it doesn't warrant inclusion on the same scale as the rest of the series. This story and those that follow will not therefore be rated, suffice to say that each and every one of them stink.
Paradise Towers.
At its heart, Paradise Towers has a reasonably interesting, if slightly cliched script. It is a measure of the McCoy era therefore, that this is taken and turned into one of the most dull, embarrassing and camp pieces of television ever to be broadcast. The guest cast is worthy of note, if only for the fact that had one tried to assemble the most incompetent bunch of hams on one production, one couldn't have done better than this. Richard Breers craps on the memory of a series that once boasted a host of interesting and memorable villains. Tabby and Tilda are straight out of a primary school pantomime and their performance is a camper than a row of tents. If all this crap wasn't a great enough assault on the senses, Keith McCulloch comes up with a score that beats even his own previous effort in the Turd Stakes. Doctor Who has well and truly died.
Delta and the Bannermen.
If the fans had not suffered enough seeing a once-loved series degenerate into farce, nothing could have prepared them for the sheer abomination that was now dumped on their screens. The idea that the series that once boasted such fine drama as The Massacre or The Deadly Assassin could be twisted into this travesty is too much to bear. Appropriately enough for a series that gets camper and camper, the production goes to Butlins to tie Doctor Who's sacred memory to the back of a motorbike and drag it through a field of cowpats. Once again the guest stars are of the lowest order, with Ken Dodd making a totally unnecessary and unbelievable appearance, but actually coming off better than the likes of Don Henderson and Stubby K, who at least had some reputation to tarnish. This is not only an insult to Doctor Who, but a waste of license payers' money too.
Dragonfire.
After the dirge of the first 3 stories, Dragonfire comes as something over a leaf. It looks to be quite a promising story, at least for the first few moments. Firstly, whoever was responsible for the awful sets deserves sacking, but then why bother when they are only to be used as a backdrop for a mass camping up contest between McCoy, Selby and Langford. Add to this, the introduction of one of the worst companions ever in the chubby form of Ace, and you truly have a recipe for dung pie. If only it ended there. If only it didn't contain the awful Starchild, Tonya Sober prancing around, the awful Land Hunt in part 3 and the terrible creature at the end of it, and so much more. One saving grace is Dominic Blind's score, which compared to the dirge that passed for music during the rest of the season, is a welcome relief. But it's like putting a ribbon round a turd and expecting to hide the smell. It don't work.
Remembrance of the Daleks.
Now things get really tricky. The previous season had been utterly awful, but so distant from real Doctor Who that it was possible to be viewed with that kind of dumbstruck detachment. Now, the production team decided to exhume the rotting corpse of Doctor Who and give it a public shafting by systematically desecrating its former icons. Had this script been submitted as a spoof for the Benny Hill show, it would have been rejected on the grounds of insufficient quality. What passes for a plot is so contrived it resembles the work of a 15-year-old fanboy with no experience of drama writing. Not too far from the truth then. This story deserves to be wiped from the BBC archives. Its shitness may contaminate other productions.
The Happiness Patrol.
A script that in any other era would have been lifted above the ordinary is here dragged into the sewer and flushed away with the pits and shit. It stinks. The sets are awful, the lighting straight from the Les Dawson show, the guest stars insulted and made fools of, the script tedious, and the production values indicative of a director who has no balls and a production team that doesn't care. McCoy once again gets to demonstrate his total unsuitability for the acting profession, and in a number of scenes actually raises the question of how he ever got an equity card in the first place. We hate it to pieces.
Silver Nemesis.
If Remembrance flush the Daleks well and truly down the bog, this story does the same for the Cybermen, and then gives them another good crapping on for good measure. What on earth possessed the BBC drama department to allow this travesty to celebrate 25 years of Doctor Who is unimaginable, unless T theories are true, and they wanted to see the show well and truly nailed. The script is the equivalent of a 6-year-old's attempt to write a Doctor Who story, only worse. Add to the mix some dreadful Cybermen, a jest cast that is so inept it beggars belief, and some gobsmackingly bad scenes, particularly Delos Grey, and you have a recipe for a birthday cake that is 100% crap. God, this stinks.
The greatest show in the galaxy.
For the first time in the McCoy era, we see some signs that there may be some vestiges of talent left at the BBC after all. Greatest show has some fine element, particularly in the accidental use of a real circus tent as an alternative for poorly constructed sets. The guest cast, although containing some dreadful performances, is certainly not as bad as its predecessors in this era. What a shame that a story that is teetering on the edge of acceptability is pushed into a moat of steaming shit by a 4th episode, which is yet another kick in the teeth for those fans who still held out hope that Doctor Who could be somehow revived. McCoy should without doubt have faced disciplinary action from Equity for his performance in the final episode.
Battlefield.
With the lengthy break between series, fans were given plenty of time to jet the hopes up for an improvement in the new season. The return of the Brigadier is the latest opportunity for the production team to utterly destroy something the fans hold dear. Courtney is turned from the lovable face of officialdom into a chorus girl in uniform, more camp than Danny LaRue. The hack behind this travesty demonstrates that the debacle of Remembrance was no fluke, with a script that is so full of plot holes you could strain rice with it. Add to this dialogue that a child would think cliched and characters that are less than one-dimensional, and you have a stinking mound of tripe that the Writers Guild would piss themselves laughing at. The sad aspect of all this is that Doctor Who has still not been laid to rest. Its suffering is prolonged, and its death agonizing point. This is like throwing a broken man into a concentration camp. It's hard to bear.
Ghostlight.
As if the knife hadn't been twisted enough, we now have to endure the laughable attempts of the production team in trying to convince us that there is a darker side to the McCoy Doctor. There isn't. The only darkness about him is the shit brown of his coat. Ghostlight is a script of such incompetence that it makes Battlefield look positively sophisticated. Stir in a cast that will have you cringing at every opportunity, and plenty of awful moments from one of the worst companions ever, and you have the perfect sup, steaming brown shit soup.
The Curse of Fenric.
Fenric has plenty of potential. Filmed entirely on location with some talented cast members. So what is the outcome? A festering, stinking lump of shit that dares to call itself drama. McCoy and Aldred reach new depths, if that is possible, and are aided by guest artists who seem to be trying to outdo one another in the turd department.
Survival.
Having ruined a great number of the aspects that made Doctor Who great, Turner and Cartmel now turn their turd spray to a character previously ruined beyond all recognition. Making Ainley's master look even more of an ass is quite an achievement. The fact that Survival is the last story to be made by the BBC comes as a welcome relief, as it is doubtful that the show could have been taken any lower than the sight of Hale and Pace chatting in Doctor Who whilst stacking toilet rolls in their shop. Still, if it was possible to stoop lower than this, Turner and Cartmel would have found a way. Thankfully, the BBC finally put Doctor Who and the viewers out of their misery. To call this story, or indeed any of this era, Doctor Who is an insult to all that went before. What had begun as an entertaining and diverting family show has by now been stripped of all its greatness and shat on in public for far too long. No one could have hated the program enough to do this to it, surely? But they did.